can be an empowering time for many of you right now, but also it can be quite challenging, especially when you are the showstopper, you are the seer, the feeler. You're the one that is able to read and pick up on even the smallest shifts of energies around you, and you're truly able to see the contrast or the difference of the programming when your own program is kicking in, or even when the other person's programming is kicking in. And this is where actually it gets challenging, but also this is where it's literally your gift, your superpower. It is challenging in the sense where it can feel maybe isolating and lonely, and it can feel like alienating, because your operating system and the way that you see the world and the levels and the layers of expansion and insight and intuition that you're stepping into and you're embodying are not going to are literally going to get you to function in a completely different way than most of the world. What it really comes down to as the foundation of it is the different energetic games that you may find yourself that you're finding yourself in with the people around you, and where actually you're triggering those games to actually play out, but also you're finding yourself either you're falling into those games, or you're finding yourself, this is where the empowerment is, you're stepping out of the game and choosing not to get into that dynamic with them, which is the codependency, the manipulation, literally what I call the dance. Before we start, in case you haven't heard yet, I want to invite you to my next vision quest that's happening in May in Peru. That is truly going to be the space for you, warrior of God, wayshower of pioneer of this path, to truly step into this next paradigm that you feel deep down you're really calling in for, to master on a deeper level specific energetics and specific dynamics that you're finding yourself in with yourself and with other people, and really get into that deeper, freer level, or layer rather than layer of yourself, where the true and raw and untamed version of yourself can fully come out. Either meet yourself there if you haven't met yourself yet, or embody those codes that will allow you to come out and come through in that way. As you are the showstopper, as you are the one that sees through everything, and you're finding yourself that seeing capacity is expanding, it makes it more challenging, right? Because your entire operation model, the entire way that you navigate relationships, that you navigate yourself, your internal relationship that you have with yourself, is so different. It's completely outside of the box for most of people. But you're finding yourself that capacity of embodying more and more of that avatar consciousness, where you're completely sharp in the way that you're seeing the triggers of this dance, of this literally energetic dance that is really dense, because it's that dance of like manipulation, this outdated system, that is of control, of fear, of guilt, of codependency, of attachment, that is really at the core, at the foundation of it, is rooted in the programming. And whenever I'm talking about this, it's never one end, it's never one-sided. But the thing is that why it's this space of like empowerment, but also it's a space of challenge, because you're finding yourself that as you're growing and expanding into more of that light and that loving light and that loving awareness, is that you are changing and shifting those codes within you. And so the outdated codes, because it's all programming, right? So the outdated program is maybe in the past was getting itself to actually dance with the other person's program. But you're finding yourself that now you are able to discern and feel when there's actually that outdated program that's actually playing out, and that is wanting you to actually dance with that energy. And I've done so many videos about this that I definitely recommend that you watch if you haven't, but truly here is this mastery. It's already a superpower to be able to see through the programming, the artificial intelligence. The second one is that you're actually triggering that in the other person, or you're finding yourself that where you used to get triggered, because that is super important, that program or that play out, that energetic dynamic and energetic dance has only its power and its control on you when you fall out of consciousness, you fall out of awareness. When you fall out of consciousness and awareness is when you get triggered. When you get triggered is when actually those pockets within you get activated. Zoo, zoo, zoo. They're like rah, 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 alert, and then that's where the emotions come up, and you completely disconnect from, you know, the moment presence, the light of awareness, the loving presence, and also your body and your mind. So it's like everything is out of whack. You know, everything is out of control. It's out of alignment because you got triggered. So now it's like the energy, the dominant energy, really seeing it like a red alarm, you know, like zzz, and this is what is leading the conversation, that is leading the interaction that you're having with the other person. And this is why it's like so tricky when you're dealing with manipulation, because the other person probably knows those pockets. And then when we get into like narcissistic energy, which I've also broke down, it gets even more challenging because the other person is trying to trigger. And as I'm saying, this other person is not doing it consciously. It depends, you know, it could be consciously or unconsciously. It's all energy, right? So the energy in them is trying to trigger the energy in you. The energy is in you is wanting to maybe, you know, fight it or get out of it, you know. And these are the moments that are super important, and that's the key. This is where the challenge is. But why it gets so empowering is when you start noticing yourself that you are rising above. Hence also why this vision quest is super beautiful and powerful, because literally a vision quest is getting you to get out and start seeing things from the outside of any dimension where you're finding yourself that you're stuck in, and you're finding yourself in a ceiling where the light of awareness and the consciousness is not able to shine through. So you're kind of in a ceiling of, you know, an outdated program. And now this is why I'm saying it's getting so tricky, because that zap, you know, the energetic zap of the false grid and the false matrix, it's like it zaps those energetic pockets. If we're not standing like warriors of God in that light of awareness and the loving awareness, we fall back into consciousness. So, and then either we experience that ourselves, where we find ourselves, we're going through some insecurities and internal dynamic within ourselves that is all of a sudden playing games with our own mind. It's playing games, you know, it's an energetic dynamic, energetic dance that is not serving us anymore. Or it could be that it triggers, you know, the agents of the matrix that start coming into a specific character, a specific person in your life. And where it gets tricky is that that's when you're maybe, because you're able to see through the program, you can get caught up in their program. And so, and then that trigger is like triggering something in you, and then you're finding yourself, you're playing into that manipulation, that codependency, that attachment. You're getting out of your core essence, you're getting out of your true self, because you are responding according to what their triggered self wants you to respond. And so you're no longer responding from your own energy, you're responding from their energy. And this is where you're stuck in that dance with them. With the, you know, the fallen grid, the agents of the matrix, whatever you want to call it. That requires a lot of, you know, skills. And that's why give yourself that grace of like, this is a journey, this is a process, because those agents of the matrix that are coming in and into those different characters in your life, they're in different dimensions. So there might be also things, pockets and triggers within you that are more traumatic, that you find yourself, you still fall out of consciousness, and you completely, your body, you know, you're no longer in the avatar consciousness, but instead you have become the character, you have become the trigger, you have attached and responded from that space. And as I'm saying, it's a grace, but you notice with other people that you've expanded, you've elevated, you've empowered yourself, that you're no longer in that state. Now, why this energy is super, super empowering? Because it's literally like a sword of truth. It's literally like able to see, literally like an eagle view, or even outside of your own, you know, persona and your own stuff. But that's why it requires your shadow stuff. It requires a lot of shadow work to know all of your stuff, to know your triggers, to know where the other person can manipulate you through, or become codependent with you, or try to play a specific, you know, facade or game with you. But that energy is really getting us to like pull back and able to observe and see everything that goes on around. And at the same time, you could be feeling. It doesn't mean that you're not feeling. Actually, if anything, you'd be bypassing. You could be feeling things. Your nervous system is shifting. You're absorbing the other person's energy. You have become locked into that programming, that outdated energy, that outdated dance that they're trying to play with you. And at the same time, through it all, like imagine how massive this is, you're able to at the same time step out and see through it all and understand that, whoa, okay, this is what is going on, because it's truly a tricky energy, you know, like all of that codependency, the manipulation and all of that. And something that I haven't necessarily mentioned is that power struggle. And this is so important because I always speak about this, but empowerment, true power, is not a power struggle. It's not, because there's no need to prove. But if you're feeling that the other person, the moment that you're stepping with, there are all those themes that are coming up, where you're feeling you're having to push your energy and like force, and like it's a dance where, you know, it's either they're in the dominance or you're in the dominance. Actually, stepping into your power is not that, because you're not playing that game with them. And that isn't one example that I'm speaking of, right? And I'm going to give several examples here. But this is one example of like the power dynamic. And, you know, they're pushing their ceiling and you're finding yourself that you want to push, push back. It's actually, it isn't that. It's actually instead, it's a boundary where really the imagery I want to give you here is truly that of, you know, a grandfather or a grandmother, like a wise elder dealing with the child. And so when you are thinking of an elder dealing with a child, there is no power struggle. It's actually, no. It's literally a boundary where you're like, And it doesn't necessarily have to be vocal. It's more, maybe it could be an energetic boundary. You're saying, I'm not going to get into this dynamic with this person. And that is it. Because they want you to get into that butting heads, or, you know, energetically, or, you know, being in that dominance and in that competition, you know, which is an energetic competition. And you're not falling for it. Another example is that of, you know, the inner child, which is literally the wounded child. As I said, because most of us, really the ego, if we do not process or integrate our ego, if we do not integrate and process our shadows, they are literally very childish. Okay, so there's a difference between being a childlike and being childish. So most of people are still stuck, as much as they have adult bodies, most of them are stuck in like childish behaviors, the wounded child. And so one of those also dance or dynamics that you might find is playing out is literally at the core, I would say, if not most of them, if all, not all of them, which is at the core of like power struggle, manipulation, codependency, and all of this, is literally the wounded child. So they're trying to probably, you know, as I said, consciously or unconsciously, poke the wounded child within you. Hence why this is where it's important to see your own unhealed traumas and unhealed wounds, so that you're not playing that dynamic with them. And they're wanting that response. So some of the examples could be, you know, the attention seeking. It could be literally, as I said, like the manipulation, wanting, you know, forcing you to respond in specific ways for them to ease their wounded child, when actually what you're really doing is reflecting a sovereign, empowered person. But they're disempowered, and they want you to be feeding that disempowerment, you know. And here what I'm talking about is not like when you are, you know, compassionately holding space for somebody when they're dealing with the child, but when you're noticing, picking up on like a bit of that victimish energy. And I always speak about, like, you know, victim consciousness, because there's so much cliche out there in the spirituality, like, oh, you're in no, that's not what I'm talking, because sometimes you need to hold yourself in that victim energy for a bit, because something just happened. You know, if you lost somebody you love, you're going to be a bit, you know, needing to feel that. So you're a victim of that situation or that circumstance. So here what I'm talking about is truly like what you're picking up on is another person's wounded child that is trying to play a game with you of like a child to child, like a childish game. And they're in their disempowered state, and they're not in their authentic state. They are actually in the program, in the wounded child programming. So really the artificial intelligence, because there's no awareness there. They're playing out and acting out that inner child, that wounded child. And they're wanting you to play there. And you are choosing that you're not going to play there, because what you're wanting to hold is that empowered, sovereign reflection that is telling the other person, I love you, I feel for you, I'm compassionate with you, I sympathize with you, but this is not you, okay? This is the program within you. And most important at the end of the day, why I say it's a bit of a challenge here for you when you are a seer, is that you can get caught up in seeing the program, okay, seeing the energy in the other person. That this is where the thin line is that when you are, because everything is energy, and you know that the most important thing is the devotion to the light of awareness and to the energy world. Like, you cannot fool yourself with something else, you know, with actions and words that don't match the energy. But this is where the thin line, where yes, you are seeing the program, but at the same time you're not forgetting that the person that you're looking at is a human being, is a person. And so it's always such a thin line of, like, you want to respond from your own energy, okay, to the person that is a human being, that is another soul you're talking with, and not respond to the program, okay? So it's such an interesting thing, right? Because even now that I'm seeing it, it's like a battle of energy. It's truly a battle of energy. And, you know, the outdated program coming in and, like, you know, sending a code and a signal to your outdated program, you know, and your wounded program, and it's like, it's going to respond because it's like automated, you know, it's this automated response. And yet you're here, like, imagine the work that you're doing to say, oh no, I'm not going to respond from that old outdated energy within me, that is the program, that is so visceral and, like, programmed within you. You know, you've been like, and you're like, no, I'm not going to respond from this. I'm going to respond from my heart, whatever you call it, right? These are just words. Some people like these words more, like from love, from heart, you know, but it's really from the core of who you are, the loving awareness, the light of awareness, and you're bringing in that expanded, you know, reflection to the other person. Now, the results of that, hence also why it can be challenging, is that, you know, the person that is, it might get into two ways, you know. Either they're going to accept the new response that you're giving them, which is a higher expanded light data that is not in the old program and that is not in the game. So either they're going to receive it and it's going to make a change in the relationship, which is so beautiful, because as I said, you are reflecting sovereignty. So you are reflecting authenticity, you are reflecting really your pure nature, and that might give them, you know, unconsciously, whether they're not necessarily doing the work, it might give them the permission to do the same, so that it finds like, oh wow, okay, that's in you. Or so they're going to accept and actually embark on that new energy, the new paradigm that you're creating for that relationship. Or the second thing that might happen is that they might get disappointed, they might resist like a wounded child, they might throw a tantrum, they might get angry, they might reject it, and they might fight back to keep like pushing you to get into, you know, that dance again, and that energetic dance with them. And it's going to go either way, but this is where it's super important for you to like be detached of whatever scenario is going to happen, and to remember that you are doing right by yourself and by the other person, because you are talking to the soul of the other person. You are talking to the human, okay, to the human essence, you know, their essence. You're not talking to the programming, you know, the artificial programming that is within, that is, you know, trying to, the fallen consciousness that we all have, that is trying to like create a chaos or create a friction or create, you know, an ickiness, you know, a stuckiness, a stickness, whatever you want to call it, like in the dynamic. But instead what you're anchoring for is a value of freedom, you know, a value of love, a value of, dudes, you got this. You know, you're the one that you're looking for. Forget about me. You don't need me. Okay? Like kind of that energy. You know, these are just words. But So it's going to go either way, but this is truly your own devotion of like detaching. And I know it's sad because, you know, you could be back to attachment, you could be, you know, you really love that person that you're dealing with, family member, whatever it is, and it hurts, you know, to see that play out happen. And maybe because you see through their potential, you see through their power, but it's not up to you. It's not up to you, you know. You just for a moment, that might help actually bring a bit of compassion to the situation, to yourself and to the other, is that just remember how much it took you to get to where you are today, how much you had to crumble, the levels and layers and energies that you had to put to do the inner work on yourself to change, and how much energy it takes to change. And when you're looking at the other person, just acknowledging, first of all, compassion for yourself of how much you've changed, and that is the own internal boundary with yourself, so that you're like, if you knew how much it took me to get to where I am right now, I'm not gonna let anything or anyone get me to go back to the older version of myself, because that's how much compassion you have for yourself, that you're saying no to those pockets, okay? You're saying no to those energetic dances and playouts that are unhealthy. And so that is the internal boundary, because that is the level of compassion you have for yourself. And now the compassion that you have for the other is that they haven't done the work that you have done. They haven't. And can you blame them? No, because that wasn't their journey. You know, that wasn't. That is not their journey. That is not the effort and the work that they have put on themselves to change and completely, you know, the death and rebirth process that you know you had to go through. So what you're looking at is just another person that is not on the path of change that you are on. Or maybe they are, but not that devoted to the light and to that devoted to the true source of all creation as you are. And so that is okay. And so the moment you look at that, this is where the compassion is, because you know how much it took you to shatter programs. You know how much it is like so much of a grip, the programs that you have within you. So when you're looking at the other person, you're understanding that this is truly their program as well, and that they're battling it. And it's not up to you here to be the savior in getting them to change their program, unless, you know, they asked you for it. You know, they've come to you with like, you know, I'm struggling and I want to change my programs. That's another story, because they gave you permission for that. But otherwise, it's not your duty. And you just understand how difficult it is to unplug from that fallen grid. You get it. If you're feeling like you want to do this very deep root source and core unplugging and reprogramming, that is really multidimensional, multifaceted, that you don't know where it originated from, but you're finding yourself that there's this trigger or this bucket or this program that you're finding yourself bounded to, like in the sense where you're not able to let the light of awareness to shine through, or even if it did, you're not able to embody it. It's not landing in the body. So like, you know it as an idea, but the body is giving you another signal. Then definitely we can work that one out with quantum energy work. So you can check that and schedule it also on my website. And of course, if you're wanting like a huge, like 10-day, huge shift of paradigm, and, you know, embracing that part of yourself in that vision quest, that's the vision quest in Peru. Like that's really, really deep work. So definitely recommend that one, and I would love to see you there for sure.